Hi friends, Trevor Raleigh real estate specialist here today to talk to you about what are the biggest perks to buying in a slower market. I know you immediately go to the negatives in your head, and we'll talk about all of those a little later. But the benefits to buying a home right now in a slower market, in my opinion, far outweigh the negatives. So let's jump in and explore some of the top perks to buying in a slower market. The first big perk I'm going to point out is that buying in a slower market is actually much lower risk than buying in a competitive market. In North Carolina and in many other states, the competition naturally creates bidding wars, and that causes the purchase price to go above appraisal range. You may just have to pay that price, whether it's justified or not. But in a slower market, that's not really an issue. Sellers have to be way more realistic, and even then they may not be able to sell for the price that they want to. But the benefit to you as a buyer in this market is that you have a much lower risk of not appraising or needing to overpay. You also don't have to put out a lot of risk in due diligence or earnest money. These deposits to a contract can get really high in a competitive market, but when there's less competition, these amounts go way down, and that translates to a lower risk offer for the buyer. If it doesn't appraise, no worries. You can negotiate it down with less money on the line. Find a big repair issue after an inspection? No problem. You've got plenty of leverage to work it out with the seller and get concession you need to cover that repair. The second big perk in a slower market is that you're way more likely to get a great deal. Sellers switch from receiving multiple offers to having to entice buyers with price reductions and concession. It's a little more like having them compete for your attention than the other way around, and that makes it a great way to land an amazing deal. Get them to their bottom dollar. Wrap in some concession to lower your interest rate. This is the market to land a deal. The third perk I'll mention, and I kind of alluded to earlier, is that you have lots of negotiation power. You may not know this already, but any resale purchase in North Carolina is considered an as-is transaction. However, you can utilize the leverage you have with due diligence in order to exercise your right to leave the contract if they're not willing to concede or make those repairs. It's also required that any material facts you've uncovered during your inspections be disclosed by the listing agent to future interested parties. So the seller is going to be pretty motivated to work things out with you if repairs are needed, especially in a slower market where it may mean they have to lower their price more or pay out of their own pocket to make those repairs. This means we've got lots of power to negotiate during the contract for those unknowns we may uncover. The last perk I'll point out is that in a slower market, the negatives that you think are negatives to buying right now are actually positives. That's my clever segue to talk about why most people think you shouldn't be buying right now. The first negative most people are talking about is obviously high interest rates. I completely understand how these have significantly increased people's monthly payments, but I also know mortgage rates are anything but static. They will probably shift pretty far next year, but the bigger difference is what you paid for the house. Let's say you bought a $500,000 home today, put 20% down and had a 7% interest rate. That's roughly $3,100 a month. But what if you waited and bought when rates come down to 6%? Odds are the price of that same home would increase too as rates go down. Competition may lift that price up by $25,000 or more. So now you have a $525,000 home. You got to bring an extra $5,000 to hit that 20% down payment, and you now have a 6% interest rate. Your monthly cost is now $29.60. So you saved $140 a month, but now you have to bring more down payment, and you have less equity than if you would have just bought now. Plus, if you did buy now, you can just pay $2,500 in the future to refinance, and then your payments would be $28.40 a month. Oops, sounds like that's the better deal by the numbers. The next negative people bring up is that there are less options in a slower market. While this is true, because of higher interest rates right now, there are also less buyers. I've never had such a relaxed time as I do right now working with buyers. We get to take our time, weigh our options, and not feel rushed to make a snap decision. It's a huge advantage to buyers. When I'm used to jumping on things sight unseen, throwing down super high due diligence on something we've only been able to see once, and having to make a rushed decision just to beat out the competition. It's a huge advantage, not a negative, to be able to take our time with less options. The last negative I'll mention is probably the biggest hurdle to a lot of folks. If it's a slow market, then it will also be slower to sell my home in order to buy a new one. I get it. All the positives for buying might turn into negatives for selling. When it is slower for sellers to sell, then things like offers that are contingent upon selling are totally possible. That option doesn't exist when the market gets competitive. This actually makes it really safe to both buy and sell because your offer can be contingent on whether you are able to sell your home. Plus, you don't have to think about the random costs when contingencies aren't possible, like renting temporarily, moving multiple times, paying for equity lines to afford down payments, and the list goes on and on and on. So yeah, it's harder to sell, but that also means it's much safer to both sell and buy. So what do you think about these perks? Let me know in the comments below. In my professional opinion, a slower market actually makes for a really good time to be buying. If you have more questions or would like to chat personally about your own situation, please reach out. My info is in the description below. And if you learned something from this, give this video a like, subscribe to my channel, and turn on those notifications so you can be notified when future content drops. Thanks for watching, friends. We'll see you in the next video.